Now, Tingyun here is going to be a fantastic character. She is really very efficient at utilizing your skill points. You've seen it before. You get into a team, you have your DPS character, you want to build a second DPS character to do more damage. You're not very skill point efficient that way. Ting's going to be able to buff up herself, add some extra damage with her talent, her skill, buff up the damage of your most prominent damage dealer on your team with her ultimate ability, and give them energy to boot. Tingyun's a pretty fast character. She's just all around very efficient and is very, very strong at getting you to do more damage with your team, whatever your main damage dealer is going to be. So as far as Ting is concerned, we're going to leave her right there in the S+ category. Bronya as well. Everything we just said about Tingyun is going to be true for Bronya as well. She's a very powerful character. She might not be as skill efficient as Tingyun is, because you just want to use her combat redeployment over and over. However, she does have some skill point efficiency in the fact that, well, you build her for damage as well. She has built-in 100% crit chance, and you want to build her for crit damage. It's going to help her ultimate as well, buff up your team. So as far as a overall tier list so far, well, we're going to have Bronya in the S+ category. Then we're going to skip over to Seele. Now, Seele is a character that just kind of does everything you want a character to do in Honkai Star Rail. Can deal with multiple enemies, does big single target damage, can be pretty skill point efficient, as well as she's generating extra turns, and then on those turns you can choose to use your standard basic attack to generate more skill points, or use your skill to do more damage. So she's kind of got it all going for her. Very fast, very effective, very efficient character. And for that reason, we're just gonna kind of put her right back up in the S+ tier. Now, let's talk about Clara real quick. Clara is a fantastic character in Honkai Star Rail. But the one thing I want to say about Clara is she is a little bit unpredictable sometimes with her damage. How many times does she get hit? How many times does she not get hit? And that kind of affects your damage. And in something like the Memory of Chaos difficulty that you are basically timed on as far as cycles are concerned, she can be a little bit worse in some scenarios than other scenarios. Depends on how many enemies are there in the battle for her to be attacked by. And for that, I'm gonna have to take her from S+ all the way down to S tier. We're gonna move her down in the S tier category. Still is gonna be a fantastic character for you, and all these different enemies that are weak to physical, you're gonna be able to break them pretty easily with Clara. She's gonna be doing everything she was doing before. And so for that reason, I'm keeping her exactly right where she was. Now, Sushang is a character we also need to talk about in this new Memory of Chaos tier list environment. Sushang is going to either be an A tier or an S tier character. As far as a hunt damage dealing physical character, she is fantastic. Her ultimate as well as her skill allow you to be very fast and tempo oriented in both breaking as well as doing damage to characters who have their shields broken. She's got the passive movement speed abilities from Dancing Blade as well as Vanquisher. But there's one thing I want to say about Sushang when we're talking about this. Now, her first Eidolon is actually a pretty game breaker. If you don't have her first Eidolon, I would put her in A tier, and that's because her first Eidolon gives you your skill point back if you use your skill on a weakness broken enemy, making it free. So if you have that, she becomes super efficient in your skill point usages, allowing you to do more healing, more damage with your other characters, use more supportive aspects, use Bronya push more on her over and over and over, things like that. So if you have her Eidolon 1, S tier automatically. If you have her not Eidolon 1, we're going to throw her down in the A tier there. So we're going to assume that maybe you have it, maybe you don't. We'll throw her right there though. She's a fantastic character though, nonetheless, at the end of the day. Now, right next to her is going to be our girl Bailu. Now, Bailu with some good builds is a fantastic character. She has got the ability to heal you multiple times without you really needing to take an actual turn with her because of her sort of setup here between her talent, the Gourdful Elixir, which is going to make her big HP invigoration heal you as well. So this is going to be nice. You have the ultimate to heal, and then it's going to give you invigoration. Invigoration is going to heal you when you get hit, and this can help you survive and cheese a lot of mechanics in the harder difficulties of Memory of Chaos, and it makes her kind of skill point efficient as well. All this free healing from the little gourd makes it so you can build her for a lot of energy recharge, and you can sort of save your skill points to use them on your damage dealers. So I'm going to have to move Bailu up to the S+ tier for right now, for this iteration of Memory of Chaos. Maybe if we get better quality gear, we won't need healers as well in some of these team compositions that we're seeing up there. But for right now, she makes things a lot easier on the survival side. So up 1 tier she goes. Now, speaking of moving up tiers, we're going to be talking about Gepard next. Now, Gepard is a crazy good preservation character. We had him in S tier just for all-around use, but because this is focused on a Memory of Chaos, well, you can use Gepard so well. Similar to Bailu, where you get a bunch of energy recharge on your Gepard there, you have the ability to put up giant shields. If Gepard goes down, he's got his talent that he's going to come back to life, give himself 100% of his ultimate energy ready to rock and roll again, and allow you to use that right then and there. So if everything's going wrong, you can ultimate, get KO'd on your Gepard, and then come back in ultimate again for your team. So for surviving big damage dealing hits in Memory of Chaos, if that's your playstyle for that party, or maybe just using Gepard to cheese those things so you can bring a more offensive oriented team, he's going to move right up into S+ tier for this tier list as well. Now, thinking of other good characters, let's talk about someone that is on S tier and may not be there anymore, but also maybe he is. Let's go with a Welt. Now, Welt is a very good character. He's going to have a lot of speed down effects, a lot of pushback effects. He's the only imaginary damage dealing character in the game. And when we're talking about something that's difficult like Hall of Chaos right now, or Memories of Chaos, I should say, in the Hall, being the only element is a pretty big advantage, but that's only partially it, because all of these speed down bonuses are going to allow your teammates to take a lot of extra actions while the enemy is broken for you. So if you're using something like Welt and a proper damage dealer that has the element that the enemy's weakness to, that's going to increase your team damage from that alone. Not to mention if you're using something like Welt with someone like Sushang, who actually does do and gains bonus effects and damage against broken enemies, he is going to be even better there. So Welt actually is going to stay right in S tier. You got debated. I know you did. You thought I was going to put him down in D, didn't you? But do we? But we need to talk about this character right here. Now, Himeko, for all around general play, she's a pretty excellent character. But when you get into stuff like the Hall, top tier floor, Memory of Chaos, a lot of the times you need to be very skill point efficient. You need to be single target damage efficient, or at least be good in single target in some capacity. And Himeko just really isn't there in any way, shape, or form for the things that we just described. So actually, for the Hall of Memories, Memory of Chaos, we're gonna have to take Himeko from S, which was arguably maybe even 1 too high, and she's gonna be down here in the B tier buddies category for right now. She's not a bad character, but remember, Hall of Memories, all of this stuff, the difficulty floors, a lot of this stuff's going to change over time as people get different gear and the floors change. And for right now, it's just not something that she's specializing in. This isn't a general tier list. It's just for this one piece of content. Do keep that in mind. Now, we do have some pluses though. So we have March as well as the Fire Trailblazer, both excellent preservation characters. March is something that gets used to combo with some other characters a lot, like March and Clara, or maybe you have like March and then, you know, Yangqing on your team. You either use the barrier to try to protect him early game, or late game, you try to use the barrier on someone else to completely divert the enemy's attention away from your Yangqing period. However, with that being said, a more overall and generally effective character is actually the Fire Trailblazer. Very good, has self-sufficiency in healing, gives barriers to everybody, reduces damage, taunts, barely takes anything themselves with their large damage reduction for themselves. So we're going to keep the Fire Trailblazer here in S, and we're going to move March down to like the A tier category. These aren't necessarily in any order as far as which characters I think are the best. This is just kind of like general, you know, whereabouts they're at. So we're going to put her in A there. Fire Trailblazer up there in a solid S though as well. So talking about some characters, I want to talk about Natasha here real quick, because Natasha is usually looked at as the bad Bailu, right? Natasha's more than just a bad Bailu, and a lot of it has always been because of this little ability here. This skill removes 1 debuff from target ally, and this is pretty huge here. Now, there is another character that can do this that is kind of sitting right next to Natasha right now, and that's March, but they're going to be slightly different in how effective they are in these harder difficulty contents. Natasha can go ahead and just use her heal to remove debuffs, right, with her skill. If you do that with March, which you can do, well, whoever you use a March's ability on is going to have the shield and is going to have increased threat. So you kind of want that person to be a tanky person, which means that if March is trying to remove debuffs from your DPS and that shield's there, but there's still a squishy DPS, Memory of Chaos, boom, you're done, which is something that Natasha can do and not have to worry about giving increased aggro to your teammates if they don't necessarily want to have it. And having that as an abundance character is a very powerful thing. In some locations, she's even a better character to use than Bailu. And I'm gonna have to put Natasha up into the S tier strictly because she's a healer that doesn't really have any drawbacks that's easy to access when you need to remove debuffs from your other characters. Now we do have some other ones here that we want to talk about. Asta is still an incredibly powerful character. If you want to go ahead and knock her and dock her because she's only as good as she is against fire enemies, that's fine. But when you find fire weak foes, Asta's doing everything for you. She's going to be bringing speed buffs with her ultimate, fire damage up, which is going to help because the enemies you're bringing her against are fire weak. She'll be able to shield break enemies very effectively with her multi-hit skill. Speed buff up as well as sort of like the inverse of Welt. Welt speeds dudes down, Asta speeds your team up. And then you have the attack buff. So you have attack buff, speed buff, shield break, damage for free. All of this stuff is very good. And we're going to keep her right in the A tier against fire weak monsters. You can throw her up in the S tier. She's a monster herself there. But other than that, A tier. So we're going to be tackling like Serval, Hook, Sampo, and Dan pretty much all at the same time because they're all slightly affected by how this iteration of the Memory of Chaos is going on right now. So characters like Sampo, he's a cool character, very dot focused, very strong in a lot of scenarios. But when you're really limited by the timer in these different harder floors, he's just a little bit weaker, even the proper team compositions in comparison to some other characters. So I'm going to move him down to B. Conversely, though, someone like Hook with investment since the buff, by the way, very, very, very good, as well as Serval being a lightning erudition character, has a very nice niche in these harder AoE lightning weak floors. So Serval's going to get a bump up from that. Hook, very solid single target fire damage, and we don't really have a big fire damage dealer. And while Hook just kind of rolls into that right there, if they're fire weak, you have Asta, you start making a really good team for these different Memory of Chaos events. Dan Heng is still going to be exactly right here in A tier as well. Fantastic character. Get that speed down, get the extra damage. He can facilitate the speed down himself. Very, very solid character overall. And then none other than our girl, Pela. Listen, Pela is a fantastic character in a lot of scenarios, especially when you use her technique ability to initiate a battle. And while Pela's going to scale with your gear quality specifically, same with like a lot of these other Harmony characters because they provide buffs and they have this sort of side effect as far as buffing up your other characters. Pela has a defense break, 2 of them actually, and the better your stats get, the more worthwhile that's going to be, is because you're able to defeat enemies and pile in more damage into enemies when they have that double defense break or a defense break in comparison to some of the longer lasting duration buffs and efficiency brought on by some of the Harmony characters. She does have the ability to remove a buff every once in a while, but there isn't anything super broken about that quite yet, as the haul here at the harder difficulties is more about being as fast and efficient and effective as possible. So if you have like really insane quality gear and one of your teams can absolutely dumpster a fight during her defense breaks with some buffs on your super invested DPS, be an S tier character. She'll carry that side of the wave. If not though, she'll still carry quite a bit. Well, she'll be in the A tier category right there. I don't even know if we're gonna make all that into the video about Pela, but she's a very good character nonetheless. Now let's talk about this guy Yangqing here. Now Yangqing has been probably one of the most talked about characters, and rightfully so. A lot of interesting conversations about Yangqing. And so he's gonna actually have 2 different ratings for me in this tier list because of the ability of characters that you have on your account and how effective those characters need to be to make him shine, specifically in content that hits really hard like Memories of Chaos. So Yangqing, by the way, is going to either be A or S. Now let me explain myself here. We already know about this. Some of the downfalls of Yangqing is if he gets hit, he's going to lose his Soul Steel Sync, and if he loses Soul Steel Sync, his damage kind of goes into the gutter. If you get into these areas where he keeps losing Soul Steel Sync, not only does his damage go down into the gutter, but your skill point efficiency in your entire team goes down the gutter. Every time he gets hit, you're going to need to heal him, and then every time you heal him, his shield's gone, you're going to need to spend another skill point to re-shield him, you're going to need to spend another skill point on him to get Soul Stink active again, and that's 3 skill points every time this guy gets hit, instead of just like someone else, like either it costs 0 skill points or maybe 1 from your healer. This guy takes 3 more. So with that being said, if you have the ability to pair him with someone like Gepard, who is insane, by the way, this is one of the best combos you can have in Memories of Chaos right now. Giant shields from Gepard, and Gepard's got all the passive taunts and provokes, and he's ready to rock and roll. Or you could even do something like Fire Trailblazer. You have the really good defensive gear to generate big barriers and big threat, so your shield doesn't just fall off in one hit in some of this harder content, not in Forgotten Hall, in Memory of Chaos. Then put him in the S tier. He's going to be one of the best damage dealers ever. However, if he's getting hit a couple times, he's going to severely drop in damage and efficiency. And that's why he's going to have 2 different spots in this tier list. If you have the giant shields, the super well invested support characters for him that he demands, not that he just gains benefit from, but demands, S tier. If you don't have those, then he could wind up an A tier character for you, which is still good. A tier is still very, very strong. In a small little story, I was hanging out with my friend the other day, and he was doing the full combo. He was the March 7th, my guy off on the side of the field. So I have Omega aggro, and his Yangqing just got punched in the face like 3 times. And he goes, what is going on? And I go, that's the A tier character problem right there. You know, it just sometimes it happens. He just keeps getting hit. What can I do? It sucks. Now I want to talk about Arlen real quick. Arlen here in a Hall of Chaos for right now. Listen, right now in this Hall of Chaos, the way that this is focused right now, a lot of the lightning floors are like, you'd rather just bring like Serval to do some AoE damage, apply some shock and stuff, and be very efficient that way. If you have a super invested Arlen, you could probably throw him in like the B tier specifically just for our Memory of Chaos right now at the time of recording, May 12th, 2023. All right, I'm gonna throw him in the B tier. Physical Traveler, C tier still. No real reason to use him, and one of the biggest reasons he's down here in C is that you can't get to use the S tier Fire Trailblazer. I know I said Traveler. Then we're gonna have Herta. Listen, Herta, very easy, very simple. You're not one-shot farming Hall of Memories Chaos. All right, so we're gonna leave her in D tier. And then this character right here, the character whose name I cannot pronounce, she does have some value as a quantum character. You know, you're dying for a quantum character for shield breaking and purposes in some of these floors, and go ahead and move her up 1. But if you have Seele, or maybe you have another way to deal with a quantum weak floor, because there are 2 other weaknesses, and there's a lot of other characters you can use for those, just throw her in D and don't use her there. So we're gonna make a gamble. Who is gonna be the most butthurt about their character in the comment sections below, and let me know why it's gonna be a Yangqing main.